Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Marissa Price. I am a Black woman intuitive healer. I am a business coach. I am an educator, kind of doing away with hierarchical learning and really creating safe spaces for Black women and femmes to connect on the internet so that we can share knowledge with each other, teachings with each other, things that we've learned, really emphasizing the importance of lived experience as part of me decolonizing my mind and the way that I'm operating the world. So, if you are interested in this type of content, healing, liberation for Black women and femmes, please subscribe to my channel. And please like this video and comment below if anything resonates with you. And those of you who are watching live, welcome. Welcome. Please introduce yourselves in the chat. I see H&D abroad. Hey, D. Hey, D. Good to see you here. As always, thank you for being here. Monica, hello. Good to see you here as well. Good afternoon. Yeah, so this topic really came about by me exploring like the deeper reasons why things may be more difficult for some of us, especially as Black women. Understanding why boundaries, setting boundaries, maintaining boundaries can be so difficult and it can feel like impossible sometimes. So I've really been like exploring the deeper roots of that. Why is that? Going back to history, right? How did we get to this place? And how can that tell us why these things may be so difficult to do, right? Those of us who have difficulty setting boundaries, we know it can feel like kind of life or death sometimes. Like, if I say no to this thing, everything is going to crumble, right? My whole life is going to fall apart. And why is that? And how might things like the system of colonialism be telling us or giving us these messages that it is impossible for us to put ourselves first, for us to not view ourselves as something we have to sacrifice, right? To not view ourselves as something off to the side, but actually a main part in our lives. How does the system of colonialism really give us that messaging that we then internalize and like tell ourselves that we can't set boundaries, right? Because we've seen over time how colonialism, what has happened when people have said no, right? They were met with violence. And so, how is that informing how we're thinking about ourselves, how we're interacting with other people, not being able to say no, to set boundaries, to put ourselves first, which is absolutely critical in the times that we're in, right? Self preservation is key to preserve those parts of yourself that are just for you, right? You're not here for other people. That's one of the messages we often get. You're here for you. You're here for you. And so how can we start to unlearn these teachings of colonialism, to tap into our agency, to reclaim our power, and to really like come into who we are authentically, right? That's kind of the viewpoint I'm coming from today. So if you are live in the chat with me, please say hello and please feel free to share things that you've learned, connections that you've made, as this is like a community knowledge sharing space. Definitely don't want this to ever feel like I'm the one teaching and y'all can't share what you have learned, because I learned from that as well. So yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. Happy Tuesday. First of all, how are y'all doing? How are y'all doing? I do want to ask that. But yes, so just getting started with the definition of colonialism. So the policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country, occupying it with settlers and exploiting it economically. So we see the effects of colonialism globally, right? This is something that has literally impacted the entire earth. Again, I think I said in my last video, the fact that I'm speaking English, right, from such a small part in the world, how so many of us are speaking colonizers' languages, right? That these originally were not our languages. But yet through colonization, right, these languages were forced on indigenous peoples, on people who were enslaved, right, as a lot of our ancestors were forcibly brought to the lands that had been taken, that had been stolen, and the brutality that occurred during that process, right? And so how does that impact how we're thinking about ourselves, right? When it comes to saying no, right? Was that a thing that we could do? No, I don't want to learn this language. No, right? Without being met with severe violence, again, brutality. And so how is this now impacting us? How we're, again, viewing ourselves, viewing our ability to say no when we don't want to do something, this fear that lives within us. What happens if I say no? Because I've seen the ramifications of it, right? And those of us who have been through childhood trauma, right, which I talk about a lot, which is also informed by the larger system of colonialism. How we treat people who we regard with less power, which is often children, right? And how is that now impacting us? So if you're a survivor of childhood trauma as well, the ability to say no. Yeah. So yes, after that definition of colonialism, right, I just want to say like boundaries are essential. They're essential to self-care, self-preservation. And for a lot of us, setting and maintaining boundaries can feel like a huge struggle, right? This is a systemic issue. So it's not just individual, it's not just personal, which is often the way that it's framed. And just viewing it through that lens, as I was trained to do actually as a social worker in traditional academic settings, right? To view these things as very individual diagnoses in Western medicine. But how is this, the larger systems at play, really telling us what we can and can't do, right? What if we try to do this and then we're met with pushback, violence on a systemic level? And this is giving us the messaging that it's not okay to push back, that it's not okay to set these and say, no, you can't cross this line, right? So how is that informing it? So yeah, we're talking about how colonialism has shaped the way we think about boundaries and what that means for our healing today. So again, please comment and share anything that resonates with you, anything that you have learned in this process. If you're also on a similar path of decolonizing your mind, body, spirit, because a lot of these messages we did not consent to, right? We didn't consent to have in our minds floating there. And we now have the power to uproot those and really replace them with thoughts that are our own. And that's why inner child healing is so important, really coming back into who you were before the socialization process started, right? Before like the fear came in. Well, what if I push back against this and this is going to happen? We come here knowing exactly who we are, right? So if we can get those pieces of ourselves back during this process, right? And it's never too late to do that. Reclaim who you were when you came here. That can be a huge part of being able to set boundaries, knowing that once you were able to do these things, right? And it's not your fault that you have been socialized to now fear what the exact thing that you need to preserve your sense of self, which again is crucial in these times. So just giving yourself grace with that too. Hey, Mara. Oh, my mouse. Where'd my mouse go? Okay. Hey, good to see you here. Good to see you here, as always. Yes. And let me know, do you have trouble setting boundaries? Because I know this is not the case for all of us. Some of us don't have any trouble saying no, right? Saying no to things that we don't want to do, that are draining us, people that we don't want to be around, environments that feel off. So is that the case for you, or do you have difficulty like I do as a recovering people pleaser, saying no, right? And putting myself first unapologetically. So let me know. I'd love to know. So yes, boundaries. So what are boundaries? So boundaries are the limits and lines you create between yourself and others to define what's healthy and acceptable for you, right? And that's very key because a lot of us are taught to look outside of ourselves, right? What does this person need? What do these people need? And how can I sacrifice myself to provide them what they need? And really this process of unlearning is really turning that arrow back towards you. What do you need, right? What do you need to be well? And providing those things to yourself and then setting those limits with others. Because if you give all of yourself away, all of your energy, something that I'm realizing we all have a limited amount of energy that we work with every day, right? And you have to be the one to set those limits on your energy. If you know something's going to drain you, right? Instead of going down the path that you normally go down of just saying yes to everything, as we're socialized to do often, can you start to little by little say no to the things that are draining you so that you can preserve your energy and preserve your peace for yourself? Mara says, yes, I do the people pleaser in me. Me too. Me too. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. It's difficult. It's difficult. Yeah. Yeah. And just as a recovering people pleaser, right? This is, I know for me, as I've been really studying myself and understanding like where these thoughts and beliefs come from. Childhood, right? Childhood, because a lot of us, we had to be people pleasers in really harsh environments, right? We had to say yes to things that we didn't want to do, things that we knew pushed past our boundaries, because kids have a way of knowing what their boundaries are, right? And it's just with socialization, little by little, you see those kind of whittle away. And I know for me, even reflecting like middle school was the point in time where I really adopted those people pleaser behaviors intensely. So if that's the case for you, let me know. Middle school is rough. Middle school is rough. Yes. 100% yes. To survive. To survive. Yes. And that's so important, right? Because connecting that to the larger system of colonization, right? Things people had to do, indigenous populations, people who have been enslaved to survive, right? Not say no, to survive, right? And it's a system of violence that's reinforced. And we see it reinforced on an interpersonal level as well. So that's true. That's very true. Thank you for that. Mara says, even in work environments, saying yes to shifts when I want to say no. Yes. Absolutely. In the workplace, something I've been reflecting on. As I've shared before, like taking on an additional role. I didn't know that I could say no to that. No one told me that. No one told me that, right? And the society functions on us having that messaging inside of us that we feel guilty for putting ourselves, our care, our needs first. It literally functions on that. And so you're unlearning this deep messaging when you decide to put yourself first unapologetically. No, I'm not doing that. Right? No, I'm not taking on that task. No, I'm not doing that extra responsibility because I'm tired and I'm going to rest. That is revolutionary. And it can be as simple as that. Yeah, hey, yes, Lavender, I'm still struggling with it, unfortunately. Me too. It's like I healed one layer of it, and now I'm on level 2. Oh, yes. Isn't that true? As you start healing, I know that's the case for me. I'll heal, like you said, one layer. I'll be like, okay, whew. And then that other layer will come back up, right? Something that I didn't even remember was there. And then I'll come back up. I'm like, okay, something else to heal. So it's a continuous journey throughout life. And that's why this process shouldn't be rushed or hurried. Because like the more truth you reveal, the more truth will be revealed to you. This is something I wrote in Cocoon, my book of affirmations, right? And something I've had to sit with. The more that I heal and the more that I bring truths to the surface about the roots of what I'm experiencing when it comes to having difficulty setting boundaries, saying no, right? The more truth will be revealed. Why is it hard, right? Once you learn that one layer, then it goes to another layer of your understanding and learning. So it's giving yourself grace and patience with that as you learn. Yeah. Hey, yes. Yeah, Mary says, growing up in an abusive household, yeah, people pleasing was a way to keep the peace, even as a young adult, giving my mother my taxes and school money because I didn't want to get kicked out. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. Right. And that's so key to explore the roots, right? Because we didn't come here not being able to say no to things. Again, if we just look at babies, if we look at toddlers, right? No is like their favorite word. So we come here knowing how to say no. So what happened along the way? So now we get to the point where we're in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, not being able to say no to things that are literally draining us. Every time we say yes to it, it's like you feel that feeling in your body. No, I don't want to do that. But you say yes. And why is that? It's really getting curious about that with yourself, right? Telling yourself, what have I been through? What has happened when I have said no in the past? Because you'll find a lot of these reactions that you're having now, they're rooted in a very real place. Did someone harm you for saying no? Did someone ostracize you? Right? And so a lot of us are still operating with a lot of these same patterns. And that's why awareness is so key, to be able to realize, oh, okay, this situation feels like this situation from my past. And that's why I'm reacting the same way. Even though I'm an adult, even though I have agency now to say, no, I don't want to do this. This is why it feels like impossible some days for me to do it. Right? Because it was at one point. It was. Yeah. Mara says, I now see it at 31, but like you said, once you pinpoint it where it starts, that's the first step of freedom. It is. It really is. Yep. That awareness can change everything. Yep. Once you pinpoint where it starts. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, because then you're able to kind of, like I said, like uproot those things that were never for you. As someone else said, that you internalized, right? Before you even had any like understanding of what was happening. Now as adults, we can look back and be like, oh, this is what led to this and this. But as children, we don't have that level of processing yet. Our brains are not at that level where they're developed at that stage. And so as adults, can you look back and see the patterns that led you to these, to not being able to say no, right? And how might this be informed by the larger systems at play, like colonization, like enslavement, right? It really goes that deep when we look at how the world functions, right? And tries to extract our power from us. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So Black women are often expected to self-sacrifice, engage in servitude, or provide all of our emotional labor, right? When I talk about the workplace a lot, this is the expectation on us to literally drain ourselves to a pulp, right? For this title, for this role, for this organization, for this person, for this place. That is what is placed on us. And so how can you now unlearn those messages that we have been taught that are not serving us, that are serving someone, but not you? And point that arrow back towards you. What do you need? Right? Just asking yourself that question. So yes, the colonial legacy on boundaries. So colonialism was about control, right? Colonial systems enforce control over land, labor, and bodies, erasing the autonomy for colonized peoples, right? And how does this inform how we view ourselves, right? Not being able to say no, to set those boundaries, to enforce those boundaries, because we've seen it play out on a larger level. What has happened over time when people have attempted to do this? Violence. And so it's giving yourself grace and patience if this is a difficult process for you, and understanding why that may be. Right? Because it's very deep, and this is literally like a global system that you are resisting against on an individual level when you put yourself first. Because this is not the role that we were socialized to be in a colonized system. But we have the power to resist against that, right? No, I'm not going to be in that role. I'm not. I'm actually putting myself first. I'm actually resting. I'm not a machine. Shout out to Trisha Hersey, right? I'm not a machine. And so I'm going to take my rest, and I'm going to put myself first, and I'm going to do what makes me happy. That's resisting against the entire global system of colonialism on an individual level. So yes. And please let me know if y'all have any questions. Still working through these ideas and thoughts, but yeah, something that has been really helpful for me to begin to tap into my power, reclaim my agency, has been understanding all the systems at play that are literally trying to extract that agency from me every day. Every day. And so it's not in your head. You're not making it up. If you're having difficulty doing these things, right? Because there are systems that function on us not knowing that we have agency, not knowing that we can say no. All right, so this may be very difficult, and give yourself time, grace, patience, understanding. if you are still on this journey as I am, right? Never want to make it seem like I have learned everything because Lord, because day after day is a struggle some days, right? So give yourself grace. You are unlearning deep socialized messaging, right? That to keep us in oppression, to keep us oppressed. And so how can you now liberate yourself from these ideas that were never meant to serve you, that were meant to serve the colonizer, the enslaver? And yes, speaking of that, I am hosting a free community workshop, virtual community workshop with Sister Afia, December 11th at 6 p.m. Central. Let me put the banner up. Yes, if you would like to register for this, it's on reclaiming rest, preserving our inner peace as a liberation practice, right? So realizing that it may be very, very difficult for us to do these things, and you're not alone. You're not alone, because this is deep, again, messaging that we have been taught through generations. I mean, even thinking about epigenetics, how these things are passed down from us generation to generation. And so, yeah, it's going to be difficult to uproot it, but that doesn't mean it's impossible, right? And doesn't mean you have to be harsh on yourself, that you have to criticize yourself for not being able to do this. It's providing yourself with that understanding. This is why it's difficult, because I was never meant to put myself first within these systems. I was never meant to exercise my agency. That in and of itself is resistance to colonialism. So yes. Yeah, so please register, y'all. And please share this with other Black women in your networks. Reclaiming Rest, Preserving Your Inner Peace, Wednesday, December 11th at 6 p.m. Central. And it's a roughly 2-hour workshop that I will be hosting with Sister Afia, community care located in Chicago, but this will be a virtual event. So yes, y'all, please register for that if you're interested. Yes. Lavendula says the hard thing for me is trying to heal the environments, where so many others don't have boundaries either. Yes. In environments, yes. Yes. Thank you for this. Yeah, because I'm just thinking about life in corporate, trying to set boundaries, where you see people overworking, right, working themselves to a pulp, and then everyone looks at you when you try to set boundaries like, what is wrong with you? That can be difficult, right? That can be difficult, because now you don't have that support that you need externally to be like, no, that's okay. And that's necessary. So that adds another layer of difficulty to saying no when you don't see anyone else around you doing it. Yeah. And I think that just connecting with communities online who are on the same wavelength has helped me be able to realize that it's not just me, right? That other people are actually thinking these same things and are moving towards saying no and setting boundaries. So thank you, Lavendula. Yes, I feel this. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for being here, see, darling. Yes, thank you for being here. Yep. Like at my job, people get really apologetic about taking time off, for example. It's hard to feel empowered to take PTO to rest when other people are apologizing for being sick. Yes. Yep. And apologizing for taking time off, right? Like we're not human beings. Like we can just work again, like we're machines. Like we wake up with the same productivity level every single day, right? This whole concept of the 40-hour work week, which came out of thin air, right? Which did not exist not that long ago, right? But we're told this is just how people live, right? This is just what we should accept. Why? Why? Yeah. Thank you for that. And apologizing for being sick, ooh. And that even makes me think of like school, right? Being punished, being like, what is wrong with you? Being told that when you're sick, when you need a day off. Something I've talked about before, like even bereavement leave. When you're not well enough to come back to work after someone close to you has passed, right? But that's the expectation. You just get back into the grind. That's not human. That's not human, right? And it really tells us the larger systems at play, that all of this was not like this at one point, not too long ago. But the messaging we receive is that this is just how things are, that we should just get used to it. And more of us are like, no, I reject that, right? And that's why it's important, for me, it has been to like pick back up the knowledge ancestrally that I was told was forgotten, that was too long ago. That's a lie, and that's a mind trick of colonizers, right? To convince us that it was too long ago for us to pick it back up and understand that people lived differently before this. People moved in alignment with seasons, with the time of day, right? It wasn't set on this schedule that we're all set on that just doesn't feel natural to a lot of us, right? Yeah. Yeah. See, Darlene says, what you said about bereavement leave, you're so right. Yeah, it's true. It's true. We don't even have time to grieve, right? And realizing it's so important to understand that at one time there were practices around when someone passed away, healing practices. We have lost touch with those through colonization, right? Intentionally. And so, how can we pick back up that knowledge? The Healing Wisdom of Africa is a book that I would recommend if you're kind of on the same wavelength of reclaiming knowledge, right? Ancestrally. Let me see if I have it here on a banner. I don't, but yes. Yeah. The Healing Wisdom of Africa by Malidoma Some. If you're interested in learning more about that. Yeah, Kono Tree, I'm not going to answer that question, but yeah, because that's kind of outside the realm of what I want to talk about today. But yeah. So cultural expectations, right? Being socialized to deny ourselves rest, vulnerability, expectations to prioritize others' needs over our own a lot. So again, asking yourself, what do you need? Right? What feels good to you versus always thinking about other people, what they need, especially in workplaces, organizations. We're often the leaders in these, right? And we often downplay what we need for ourselves because that's what we're socialized to do. How can you now push back against that by prioritizing yourself, your rest, your wellness, right? And being in places where it feels safe to be vulnerable, which can be difficult to find, right? It can be, to have a safe space to just be like, I'm not okay. Right? And hopefully this channel will serve as a space where you can do that, process what you're going through, understand that you are human, right? And you don't have to put on the mask. That's really what I want this channel to be, because that mask can be suffocating. It really can. So yes, throughout history, Black women's autonomy has been dismissed or exploited under the system of colonization, colonialism, right? Through colonization, white supremacy. How do colonial ideas of productivity, perfectionism, and self-sacrifice persist today? Things that we have internalized oppression, which I'll be talking more about, as well as lateral oppression. How do we take the messages that colonizers tell us, internalize them, and then use them to oppress each other? right? Some things to think about. Yeah. Yeah. Lavendula says, I agree. The mask is suffocating. And it feels so different trying to navigate the world without it. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. It feels so different trying to navigate the world without it. Yeah. That's deep. That's deep. Yeah. When you're so used to wearing the mask. And there's a poem, We Wear the Mask. I forgot who it's by. That I read in college. But yeah, that's true. Who are you without the mask if you are just so accustomed to putting it on every day? To survive, again, giving yourself grace. A lot of us have to do this to survive. Right? But do you know who you are underneath the mask? I think that's important, something I've been sitting with too. And thank you, Lavendula, for this. Yes. It does feel different. It does. Yeah. Because a lot of us, like, that's all we know, right? Like I talk about on my channel, like the education system primes us to put on the mask, to put ourselves into boxes. Shout out to The Box by Lavendula. To survive, to get through these situations, right? These organizations that, yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, Paul Lawrence Dunbar, We Wear the Mask That Grins and Lose. Yes, I'm the diaspora. Yeah, diaspora. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. That's the poem I was referencing. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Butterfly Effect. Good to see you here. Good to see you here. Yes, Paul Lawrence Dunbar. Yes, please check out that poem, y'all. We Wear the Mask. Yes. Yeah. Mask that grins and lies. Yeah. Yeah. Thank y'all. I appreciate that. Yes. So fear of rejection or punishment, right? Just under the system of colonialism, right? The fear of punishment for asserting autonomy, which may lead to people pleasing behaviors. What has happened when we look throughout history, which is why history is so important, when we have said no, when we have risen up, when we have demanded things that were not given to us freely. And how can we be prepared for that, right? And still assert our autonomy in resistance to that, right? But it's really important to understand that the reason why these things may feel so difficult or impossible is rooted in history, in larger systems at play that tell us that we are not able to exercise our agency or autonomy, that that's not for us. That's for them. That's for the colonizers, right? Rejecting that. No. No. It's for us too. Abdul says, thank you. I'll leave here with a reading recommendation each time. Thank you for that. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And yes, y'all, if you ever have any book recommendations, I love books. So please feel free to always put those in the chat. Yes. Yeah. Generational trauma, right? The ways ancestral experiences with colonial violence influence inherited beliefs about boundaries. What did our ancestors experience throughout generations that has been passed down, right? Through our DNA. It doesn't even have to be verbally, because a lot of these things were too painful to even talk about. And leaving space for that too. But through our DNA, what have we inherited when it comes to boundary setting, right? Expressing our agency, our creativity even. And the danger that came with that under the system of colonialism, of being an individual. Something I've talked about with Glenn Mazzini on her channel, right? Setting your identity for yourself, knowing who you are. How much of that is resistance to the programming we get that we just have to be a member of the system, right? A worker. to perpetuate these systems, that we're not individuals with unique gifts, talents, abilities, skills outside of these things? That's a question to ask, right? So, how can generational trauma really impact our ability to set boundaries? So yes, reclaiming boundaries is a liberation. Like I said, please y'all register. Oh, I have it on the screen still. Yes, I'll be hosting a free community workshop for Black women, reclaiming rest, preserving your inner peace through a lens of Black liberation, incorporating the work of Trisha Hersey, Octavia Rahim, Alicia Renice, as we think about how we can preserve ourselves in these systems that literally operate to extract our wellness, our peace, our joy, and how we can take it back and build a force field basically around these things that are so necessary to our well-being, right? And there's a vested interest in that being extracted from us, taken from us without our consent. So how can you preserve that? So please register if you're interested. Wednesday, December 11th at 6 p.m. Central with Sister Afia Wellness Community Care. So yes, how can we reclaim our boundaries as liberation? Recognizing that boundaries are resistance. Oh, thank you, Pamela. Thank you so much. How exciting and necessary. I appreciate that. And thank you for being here. Yes. Yes, I'm excited. Yeah, and if y'all have seen just the journey that I've chronicled on my channel, being in a toxic job, right? Healing, trying to reckon with what in the just happened, right? Which I'm still kind of in the process of doing that. How did it get to this point? If y'all go back and watch my earlier videos, now being at this point, understanding how it got there. Because I have been primed for this for my entire life. Not being able to say no, not being able to set boundaries, stand up for myself often. And when I did, I was met with what? Punishment. And so that instilled a deep fear that I couldn't do it again, right? Exercise my agency. And now coming back into that self that once was, that's really where your power is. That's really where your power is. So can you connect with those previous versions of yourself that did set boundaries, that did say no, that did stand up for yourself, right? And you were in environments and situations where it was not received well. But now you're not. And even if you are, you're an adult, right? With agency and the ability to extract yourself from those harmful, toxic environments that don't allow you to have the agency that you should. So yeah, setting boundaries is a revolutionary act to reclaim agency. I do have a quote. Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare, by Audre Lorde. Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. As we see things happening, right? Things that feel like they're out of our control. It feels overwhelming. How can you turn within? How can you care for yourself as an act of political warfare? If you don't have the energy to engage, how can you care for yourself instead? That's also resistance. That's also activism. So just asking yourself that. Realizing that boundaries are your resistance to oppression on an individual level. They're your resistance to colonialism, to white supremacy, right? Because we are not socialized to have boundaries under these systems. And we're met with punishment, violence, right? We have been. And so, how can you care for yourself in a radical way, which is going to be critical now and going forward, right? Because there are people that do not want to see us well. And that has to be said, right? So it's really at the top, like at the top of a lot of our list, right? Is caring for ourselves now that we see how things are. And they've shown us from generation to generation how they are. Okay, so how can we now preserve ourselves? Because there are active forces working to, right, to extract all of these things that we need to be well. And setting boundaries is one of those acts. It is a radical act. So some practical steps to start building boundaries. If it feels so out there, right? How do I start to say no? I know, like I said, even looking back on my older videos, that felt like impossible to do, especially in the role that I was in, the organization that I was in. Because a lot of these organizations exploit our ability to care for our communities, right? And they take that and they see that as a way to exploit, just like the system of colonialism, to use for gain, capital gain, right? Prestige, social prestige, marketing. And so it's really protecting those parts of yourself. No, you cannot have this. This is sacred, right? So you can start by saying no to one thing a week that drains you, being aware of it. When I do this thing, I really don't like doing it. And so next week, I'm going to say no to it and see how that feels, right? Starting small, becoming aware of the before and after. How do you feel before? How do you feel after you say no? Right? Because before can be the scary part. I'm not able to say no, like people may hate me. Okay. Sit with that. Still do it. Say no, and then see how you feel afterwards. Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel at ease? Do you feel like you have more time for yourself? If those answers are yes, then that's something you need to continue to do to preserve yourself. Practicing self awareness. So, again, reflect on where you feel depleted or overextended and recognize your agency in that, right? That it doesn't have to keep going down that road, that you can intervene. Even if you couldn't intervene at one point as a child, now you have the agency to do so. Now you have the autonomy to step in and even protect your younger self. I know that visualization has been helpful for me. Now I'm in charge of protecting all those previous versions of myself where I couldn't say no, where I couldn't stand up for myself, right? I'm responsible for those previous versions of me. So that may be helpful as well. Asserting your needs clearly and without apology, which may be difficult, again, for those of us who are recovering people pleasers. This is a practice, right? Not saying that you have to wake up and do this tomorrow. This takes time. And for it to be effective and long lasting, it really does have to take that time, right? So giving yourself patience, grace, right? Not apologizing for the fact that you need to rest. You're human. Of course you need to rest. Of course you need to take time for yourself. Yeah. Another way to reclaim boundaries is liberation, reconnecting with pre-colonial practices or ancestral wisdom, right? Like I said, the healing wisdom of Africa. Let me see if I can get this out. Yes. The Healing Wisdom of Africa by Malidoma Patrice Somé, if you're interested in just exploring exploring different practices, pre-colonial practices for wellness, for connecting with nature, for setting boundaries. Once you understand some of the roots, it may be easier to do. I know that has been the case for me. So yeah, let me know if y'all have any questions, anything to share, anything you're working through when it comes to setting boundaries, maintaining them, because it can be so difficult. Again, because we are not the messaging that we get in setting boundaries, it runs counter to each other. Again, the messaging of self-sacrifice, of perfectionism, of productivity. And so for you setting boundaries and reclaiming your rest, you are resisting multiple systems of oppression. Just sitting with that fact. And so, of course, it's going to feel difficult, hard, impossible, but it's not. And it just takes practice. Again, saying no to something every week that you don't want to do, that drains you, and making that a practice that you incorporate into your life. Yeah. Yeah. So, other examples of, hey, Aaron, good to see you. Good to see you here. Thank you for joining. Thank you. Other examples of boundary setting. Say no to additional emotional labor. Saying no to, especially in the workplace, the clubs, the committees. I'm calling myself out because I've done all these things. Right. And really recognizing that no, my value is not in me laboring for other people. I came here valuable and I always will be valuable. And that may be like repeating that affirmation to yourself may be helpful to start to set those boundaries. Because a lot of us are taught to seek our value in other people clapping for us when we sacrifice ourselves to our own detriment. And how twisted is that? All right, so realizing that you came here valuable, you always will be valuable, and nothing will ever change that. Protecting your time for rest and joy, incorporating a rest practice, a joy practice into your life. Refusing to overwork, the politics of refusal, as resistance to the grind culture that a lot of us are in. Right? How can you take those small moments for yourself? Again, it's a practice. It's a slow practice, but it is possible. Just by refusing to do one thing at a time. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not. And again, if you are a survivor of childhood trauma, where people's reactions to you saying no was literally, it could have been a matter of life or death. This is going to be an even deeper, slower practice. And so it's really giving yourself grace with that. And reminding yourself, why does this feel so hard? When I tried to say no before, at this age, during this time, this is the reaction I was met with. And so I'm going to have to process this because a lot of us didn't even have time to process what was happening to us at that age. And that memory may come back up. Right? So it's really giving yourself all the time, grace, patience in the world as you move through this. But know that it's possible. Know that it's possible. And I do have a workbook that I created. If you're interested, it's linked in the description section. 5 steps to begin healing from childhood trauma, which walks you through those 5 steps. If you're in the process of understanding the roots of why this may be difficult, of things people said to you, right? And it's really a compassionate workbook that I created to live with you throughout your life. so that you can go back to it and see, okay, I wrote this at this age, and this is what's coming up for me now, right? 10 years later. Because this is a lifetime journey. Healing is a lifetime journey. Yeah. You're important, Viola. Aaron, yes. Thank you for sharing that with us. Celebrating you. I love that for you. Resting now. Yes. That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you. Yes. I love that. I love that. See, Darwin said, oh, yeah, I feel so empowered. Thank you for this feedback. Thank you. Because it can be really kind of difficult to do these lives and not have like the real time feedback of if things are landing. So I appreciate that, y'all. I really do. Thank you. Aaron says, so true. It's hard. Saying no is such a superpower. It is. It is. Yeah. And it can be so difficult. Oh my gosh. When you first start, right? Because you're doing something new. So just telling yourself that this is hard because it's new. But the more that you do it over time, it's like you start saying no to things left and right. Once you realize that you have the power within you to do it, that the world doesn't crumble when you say no to something that's draining you, that you don't want to do, that irritates you, that you have the agency and autonomy to do that. And over time, you realize, oh, I can do this more often. This feels good. And really tapping into that. How does it feel before and after? Before and after. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, so let me put my banner back up. Again, I'll be hosting a workshop. If you're interested in further tools on this, how to reclaim your rest unapologetically, preserve your peace, it is a free event that I'm hosting in collaboration with Sister Alfia, Kamisha, who I interviewed on my channel about 2 months ago at this point. Who's a fellow social worker, Kamisha Jones Brandon, who was the leader of Sister Afia, invited me to host this workshop. So I'm honored. And yeah, reclaiming your rest, prioritizing your peace, which is essential in these times. Right. So if you are interested, please register. Please register for this. Let me put in the chat again. Okay, yes. And yes, y'all, please share your wins if you have them. I love to shout y'all out. Yes, just got my temporary residency stamp here in the States, headed to Mexico in January to complete the process. Say no to the things holding me back, made this more possible. Pamela. Virtual hug. Virtual hug. That is so amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. Saying no to the things holding me back made this more possible. And isn't that the case? Right? When you begin to say no, realizing that we all have a finite amount of energy day to day. So when you begin saying no to the things that you don't want to do, all of a sudden you have more time for the things that you do want to do. And that's kind of life changing because now your energy is flowing to where you want it to flow versus where you thought it had to flow before, because that's how you've been socialized. Again, under these systems that tell us that we're just here to work, that we're not here to experience joy, pleasure in life. So you're resisting that, and you're finding as you do this process, you have more energy for the things that actually speak to you. Right? Outside of what someone has told you that you have to do. Now you get to do the things that you want to do because you have energy for it. And setting boundaries is really that powerful. Yeah. Yes. Congratulating you. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, yes, y'all, as we wind down, today. First of all, I want to thank y'all for being here. Do want to say please subscribe to my channel if you're not already. If you're watching on the replay, please like the video. Please comment below your experiences setting boundaries, anything that you learned that would benefit all of us, really, as we're learning how the greater systems of colonialism, white supremacy, capitalism have told us that we are unable to set boundaries and have told us that we have to self-sacrifice, and how we can begin to reclaim our agency, our power, liberate ourselves from those messages that are not for us, never were, and really come into our authentic selves, right? Which requires rest, peace, joy, all these things that we're taught were inaccessible to us, but for other people. Where does that messaging come from? And how can we now shift the narrative? No, that's for us too. That was always for us. That was always for us. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yes, celebrating you. Celebrating you. So, yeah, setting boundaries. It's not always easy, right? Again, as a recovering people pleaser, I'm still working through why it's so difficult for me to say no. I have a greater understanding now than when I first began this journey, especially on YouTube. And that's one of the things too, like sharing your story, even if you don't want to share it publicly, but recording videos to yourself, journaling, voice noting, so that you can go back and see your progress, right? What was I working through at this moment, and how much have I grown since then? Celebrating yourself for that. And understanding, why was I struggling so hard with this now, and why is it easier for me? Well, because I've been practicing this for this time. And that's all growth is in life. It's just a series of steps that you put into practice day after day. And then all of a sudden you'll wake up one day and it's like so much easier. You just say no to stuff you want to do. You don't want to do just like that. Something that felt impossible before is now just second nature. Right? So setting boundaries is not always easy, but it's essential for our healing and our liberation, especially as Black women. So yes. And just to end with, right, you have a right to protect your peace. Your boundaries are sacred. The messaging that we've received from colonizers, enslavers, telling us our boundaries are not sacred, that they can just run right over them. False. False. Really waking up to our inherent power to be able to resist that messaging, reclaim your sovereignty, your sense of self, your inner peace, protect it at all costs. And know that there are forces out here working to extract that from you at every turn, which is why it feels impossible, difficult, and you're unable to do it. But the more that you can tap into the power that exists within you and implement those small steps over time, bring your awareness to how you feel before and after you set that boundary, that initial boundary, and then just start doing it little by little over time. Right? You begin to liberate yourself from feeling like you have to say yes to everything, that your worth exists in saying yes to every request that comes your way. No, it doesn't. You're worthy because you are. Just because you are, and you always have been. So I hope that was helpful, y'all. I hope that was helpful. Yeah, please register if you are a Black woman looking to reclaim your rest, preserve your peace, for a workshop, free workshop I have coming up with Sister Afia, Community Care, December 11th, 6 p.m. Central, virtual. The link is in the description section, up on the screen. I think that's it, y'all. I think that's all my notes. I appreciate y'all being here. Yeah, I have a few things coming that I'm working behind the scenes on creating, so I'll be announcing those in the next few weeks. Yeah, just want to say that I appreciate y'all. I really appreciate y'all being here. I do not take that for granted at all. So yeah, y'all. I'm going to get out of here. Hope you'll have a beautiful rest of your day. And until next time, bye. Thank you.